his first bake, to test to see if the paint is fully set, use a piece of cotton wool that you've wet and just give it a little bit of a rub. If it doesn't come off, it's set. If it does, or a bit of colour comes onto the cotton wool, it is not set and you need to rebake. One thing that can happen when you bake, because the vinyl heats up, if you put it on a drying rack like this, you'll end up with a lump in the head or limb. But I made the mistake, because we had a pet emergency, of leaving him laying flat after baking, and now he's got a flat side of his head. That is super easy to fix when we bake next time. I will stuff his head to bring it out. The vinyl will heat up, it'll come out, and then as it sets again, it'll stay out. So if ever you get sinking in the head or anything, you just stuff the limb or head to push it back out and then reheat it. But I won't reheat it until he's ready for baking again. So the first layer we're going to do today is a purple mottling layer. To do that, we can use a sponge from yesterday, except it's gone missing. I'm going to just pull a couple of bits off the sponge in different sized holes. You need them fairly deep, but they don't have to be extremely deep. And I always take each corner off as well, so that you have less of a unnatural line. You can use sea sponge, but I just do this. I'm gonna mix. I'm using the lip blush nail. You can use warm blush to mix this, and then vein blue. These are. That is a very dark purple. With the mottling sponge, you don't want it to be too wet. So dip it in a little bit further than you would normally. Squeeze it out as much as you can. You don't want it wet because you do not want runs. The reason we've put the holes in it is to give it a different type of effect. If you go over the one area too much, which you need to do if it's too wet or it has runs, you can lose the effect. When I start a new colour, especially a colour that's hard to remove, I'll start somewhere that's not going to be noticeable if it does make a mistake, like the top of the head, just like that. He is going to look a bit grey or purple when we've finished this layer, if we can get the cat fur off. But that's okay, because we're going to do other layers of other colours on top to warm him up. Oops. That's smacking his face into a foot. Can you see on the camera the little circles that are in there?
Mm.
That is the effect you're going for. So I'm doing it fairly thin layers so that I can always add more, but I'm not doing too much. I'll do the face after I do the back of the head. As you can see, just a little bit of the mixture goes a long way. I've done almost half the head without re-wetting the sponge. And we have cat fur on top of his head again. Apparently the dog doesn't like that either. I'm going to wet the sponge again. Just a little bit this time. Squeeze it out. If you're squeezing it out with your fingers and you're not wearing gloves, do not touch the vinyl with that hand, because you'll put marks on the vinyl. Try not to go over the one spot too much, or you can lose the mottling effect. Up until now, you may not have noticed much change in the vinyl colour, but you will start noticing that in the next few layers. Try not to go on the lips, as with the other layers we've done. If you do, don't stress. If you don't, that's fantastic. There's not much light in here. That is his face pretty much done. to make sure you get into all the little creases, but you don't want to use a brush doing this piece. So I'm going to let that evaporate. We may end up doing another layer of it, and then repeat that on all of the limbs. So by now your last layer should be evaporated. Your baby shouldn't be too purple or grey even. Sometimes it can give a grey appearance. So if I move this foot. Sorry, I'm trying to do the filming on my own. I don't know if you can see with the camera. You can see his vein just here. And you can kind of, not very well see it in this camera for some reason. The mottling. See how it's not a completely even colour? That is what you're going for. It's very pale. It's not completely, bright and in your face. It's subtle, and that is what you're after, subtlety. As you can see, his head's still caved in. It's fine. We can fix that when we do the next bake. So this layer we're going to be doing is to warm up the kit. So when I say warm up the kit, I'm talking about the colouring, not the actual vinyl. So I'm going to be using Bountiful Babies into the video. So it's Lip Blush Nail, and they call it colour number 4. So we're going to mix that up like we did with this. So it looks super red, but it won't come out that red, I guess. You don't want to make the layers too thick or add too much paint. Like I've said before, you can always add extra layers, but it's really difficult to tone a colour down if you have done it too dark or something. So we need another sponge that has little holes in it like this. We can't use this one because it's currently purple. And it's soaked it all the way up, like too far up to be able to just tear it off and reuse it. We may reuse this sponge later for another purple layer depending on what's happening. But I can use this one. I'm just going to tear a little bit off the end because it's got blue on it. And then pull out the corners. Just like this. And then pull out the center. So you don't want a perfect pattern in it. Just random little holes. It's a bit blurry. There we go. So just random holes. If you do patterns in it or anything, that can not look as natural, I guess. So I have to have him facing me to do it. I'll do this part of the head first so that I can show you what I'm doing. And then sorry, had to stop the video twice now, but you'll only see the once because the dog's going psycho. Just noticed a little red mark. That's probably just a splash or a bit that was on my finger and has touched the vinyl. Because I didn't bake the last layer, if I try to rub that off or something, it will take the last, and I've just spilled the paint. It will take the last layer of paint that we did off. The good thing is it's not set paint. So as I'm doing this layer, it should thin out that little spot. Because it's in such a small area, you can very carefully use your fingernail to scrape it. But like I said, you're going to disturb your previous layer. Now that I've spilt my paint, I'm just getting it off the board. So we're going to work on top of the head. The reason I start on the top of the head is because this baby will have hair. If you do painted hair, it's not going to be affected either. If I start on the top and realize, hey, that's way too dark, I can adjust it before doing somewhere like the face, which is harder to fix. So just going over. But that has hardly any colour at all in it. And I have cat fur on him. So you see that? There is hardly any colour in that at all. So I'm going to mix what's in here first. I just used a little bit that was spilt. So I'll dip it into the pot this time. There should be more colour this time. Yeah. And cat fur. So there's more colour now. You see that? So I'll quickly do the top of the head and then show you. You don't want to go over the one area too many times. You don't want to press too hard either. Okay, so that's what we're doing. You can see that it's a little bit red. It kind of looks a bit odd in the camera, but in person it looks really good. It's not even, and that's what you want. You want the little spots in there because that's what gives it the mottling effect. So we do quite a few layers of this. So we'll do this red one maybe 2 or 3 times, and then maybe another purple layer before doing more red. It all depends on how it's going. You always kind of play it by ear, I suppose. So to get that off, that's made it worse. Just quickly fix that. So that red spot I showed you before, I'm about to go over that area and hopefully can pounce it out or make it so it's not noticeable. It's still there. So before I go any further, I'm going to get a clean toothpick. This will definitely remove a little bit of the paint that isn't baked from the previous layer. I'm just going to gently rub that little spot that's coming off. You can see that's not as bad now. Just rub it a little bit more. It's only where it is. Don't want to rub on anything other than that. Get my sponge with the colour, go over that little section again. Don't press hard. And now you can barely notice it. And when he's finished, you won't notice it at all. So if you get a little spot of colour like that, if it's a blue, it's going to be a little harder to fix and you will need to try and remove that. And this is why we should bake between each layer. If I had have baked after the purple mottling layer, I could have just washed that off. But because I didn't, I couldn't, which is fine. You won't notice it, and I'll keep showing you that area to show you how to cover it up. And then he's going to have hair as well, so you won't see it. If it was on his face, it would be a completely different scenario. I'm going to do around the back of his head and neck. I always do the back of the head, well, the top of the head, back of the head, everywhere except the face before I do the face. That way I can judge whether the paint needs to be thinned out more or get more colour, anything like that. Don't press hard. I think I've said that a few times. If you press nice and gentle, it helps prevent getting runs if you have too much paint on your sponge. After this layer, if you haven't noticed much change in the colour of your kit versus up here versus where you're not painting on this ring, you will definitely notice after this layer, although you should see it quite clearly after the purple layer we did. Just evening that out a little bit, but you can see that there is an effect there. It's not just plain paint, and it looks a lot purpler on the camera, which is partly because of the lack of light in here. It's an overcast day today, so light is even more difficult. I haven't turned the lamp on because it was creating too much glare on the picture. Just dip your sponge whenever you need to. You don't want your sponge too wet. It stops being effective when the sponge gets too overloaded with liquid. So I'm working right up to the side of the face on each side. I think that's way too much paint. So I'm going to add a little bit more thinner. This is only happening because I spilt my paint. So I guess don't spill your paint. So add a tiny bit more thinner, mix it up, and then it'll be fine. That is nothing to worry about. I'll show you how to fix it now. So once you mixed your paint the first time, and you started, if that had happened the first time, either tip a little bit of plain thinner into a container on its own with a clean sponge and then dab at it, or thin out your paint a bit more, put your sponge in, bring it out really, really well, and then go over the area and thin it out with your sponge. I'll turn it around and show you in a second. Piece of cat fur again. Just quickly keep thinning it out a little more. That one piece of cat fur keeps... I'm just going to use a toothpick to get this piece of cat fur. It's easier than using my finger. And I don't like the feel of the thinner on my hands. It dries your skin out really badly too. Can't get that. Use my finger after. Just going to turn him around in 2 seconds and show you a couple of things. So I've thinned out that bright red patch. As you can see, the sponge isn't getting in behind that ear. So we need to fix that. You can either turn the sponge around and use the other end. I can't with this sponge, but I can with the purple sponge. So I'll dip that in just a little bit, squeeze it out really well, like that, and then get in behind the ear. You don't want to go too far away from the ear on this because it's a mottling layer. It needs to be textured. Try again. Another way you can do it, which I'll show you in a second, is with a paintbrush, just like we did with other layers. So I'll get another paint, so clean paintbrush. I'm going to dip it into the paint, mix it around, blot it onto your sponge to take any excess off, and then dab at the area you're painting. You don't want to ever use a brushing motion at this stage, or at most stages. Now I remember why I don't use these brushes for painting. From Facebook. Or my personal Facebook account, which I can put the name down in comments for you. So that's around that ear. It's still not perfect, so just above the ear is not great. But I'm going to come back to that once I've done the rest of the face and head. So I usually get a coat on and then go back and fix any of the fine details. So go around to the other ear. Try to work around it. You can put your sponge on an angle like I am here, like that. Just try and get in there. And then under the chin, make sure you go all the way down to this groove. You don't want to stop just above where the vinyl dips in. So this groove in here, is where the cable tie sits to hold the body into place. So the baby needs to be painted right up along that. Doesn't need to be painted in the groove or in the ring below it, but just like that. Okay, so now I'm going to do under the chin and then the face. Don't really want to get it on the lips at this stage, if you can help it. We are going to do some stuff with the lips soon, but we're just getting these mottling layers done first. Make sure you get right in all of the creases. Again, you don't want to go over the one area too many times or you can lose the effect on it. We haven't yet done anything inside the mouth. We are getting to that though. I'm having trouble holding the head. I'm just going to prop the head up on a bottle just to make it a little easier on my hands, and then I can hold it like this. You can buy from Still Moments Nursery, it's kind of a thing that goes up inside the head that you can hang on to, and you can buy a clamp for it so that it clamps to the table. So I just mixed up a little bit more paint then. So I've got him up on this bottle lid as it's saving some pain in my hand. My hand was cramping up. It's not working either. You will try different things throughout painting. You may come up with a couple of things that I haven't, which is fantastic. Always remember that if you don't like the way one person is telling you to do something, or you've found something that works better for you, go with it. It's all about what you're finding effective and easier. There's not many do's and don'ts with reborning. There's some, like you must thin your paints to watercolor consistency. There have been people that put the paint on straight from the pot. There are some techniques where you can do that, but with those techniques you are still thinning it just differently. And I will do a video on that, or maybe add it to one of these, but it's a more advanced technique, and I'm trying to do a video more aimed at people that have never done reborning before. So right now we have a really good mottling effect on the sides of the head and the back of the head. The face doesn't seem to be taking it. That is most likely because there's a lot more blue behind the face than anywhere else on the head, so it looks slightly different. It is taking it. It just takes a little bit longer to have an effect. So be patient. So I'm getting some more paint, putting it on his face, and then I'm going to put my sponge a little bit more. Spread it through. Kits like this that have super deep creases can be a little more trickier because you do have to get in all of those little creases. So I am about to get a brush, possibly a different brush to last time. Don't want any clumps in what you've done. So now I'm going to use the brush I mixed the paint with. I'm going to really wring it out and then use it to just dip into the creases. So around the eyes, the bridge of the nose, the chin. There's a big deep crease there under the chin and above the chin because he's got a bit of sucky up lip. You want to get in under the nose and the two furrows here and here. My brush is molting. If your brush molts onto it, get a clean sponge and just dab. The brush bits will stick to your sponge and come off your paintwork so that you don't have to wipe it off.